Is it possible for a noob to install a custom phone ROM to enhance their privacy while they use their phone for their day-to-day work? Well, today we're going to be talking about Graphene OS and how that might be the solution you have been looking for. Welcome back to Switch to Linux. As we said, we're going to be talking about the phone ROM called Graphene OS. This is one of the ones recommended by Edward Snowden for privacy, and you're not going to do a much better job than this. Now, there has been a little bit of controversy over Graphene OS, and about that, all I have to say is, check my notes, this is informative and unfortunate. But that being said, I do want to look at the software and not some of the potential drama around it. Obviously, there is one video that questions, can we trust the software if the developer seems to have some issues? Some people are saying I tried my best to give the person an open platform, and still some sources have actually said that the original person causing some of the issues is no longer involved in some of the communications on the projects. I don't know the answers to all those, and I'm not much of a drama guy. The only way you get me to get drama in is if you want to put on an anime avatar and try to cancel me directly. I'll respond to you then. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and chat about Graphene OS. I will have timestamps down below, but we're going to start out with a little bit more story because I know some of you guys like some of that kind of stuff. So we'll go ahead and do that. Of course, if you've not already, you can consider subscribing to the channel, hitting a like button or a dislike button down in the comments. I know some of you guys watch my videos to hate them. I don't know what you're talking about. That's okay. I'm okay. That's fine. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive on in. So first and foremost, of course, I like my Lineage build, and I have been hesitant on looking at Graphene over one thing, and that is that Graphene OS does not allow me to do a thing called ADB root, which Lineage does. That is important on my Razer phone because the Razer phone, at least on the original Lineage build, there was something wrong with a camera that it wouldn't actually record audio well. And by using ADB root, I was actually able to modify the system files and fix the camera so the camera would work. Of course, shortly after that, somebody sent me that Samsung phone, which takes way better photos. So I use that for photos and videos and stuff rather than the Razer camera anyway. That being said, the other thing I use ADB root for on Lineage is a custom host file to block advertising, session replays, and things like that. Graphene OS does not allow you to do that. So that was been one of the holdouts I want to look at and would weigh into what my thoughts are on the distribution. But we'll go ahead and get into all that in a little bit. Now, before we dive in, of course, I was using this Lineage, this Razer 2 phone on Lineage for quite a while. And after about 2 years, I pop into one small town after coming off the backside of a mountain. And for whatever reason, I could not get cell signal to work in that town. So I popped the SIM card out and I put it into this guy here, which is a Pixel 5a, which I happened to find at a pawn shop for $130. So I said, hey, that's a Pixel. I can use that to test that Graphene OS. I bought the phone, and for about a month and a half, it was just up in my storage because I don't have time to mess with it right now. Well, I am getting to this town and having some problems, so, well, I guess it's time to mess with it. And I found out you can install Graphene OS in a couple hot seconds. And so we went ahead and did that, popped my SIM card over there, and I have been testing that routinely, although I might go back to the Lineage phone. I don't know yet. We'll go ahead and chat about those. So first and foremost, let's get into point number one. I am not the typical phone use case. So you wouldn't want to take my word necessarily for what is good for a phone ROM. Why? Well, I am one of these very weird people in modern day society that's not addicted to their phone, nor do I do much on my phone. My phone is used for basic communication with people. I also use it to do simple, quick internet searches, and I do use it to catalog most of the news that we're reviewing to look at the weekly news roundup. I do use it for my Bible when I go to church and for Bible study, and I use it for Greek studies because I found that the Anki flashcard system is far superior than anything else. While I can run that application on the computers, I just find it more convenient to use it while I'm taking a walk with the phone. So I don't use my phone for a ton. We do a little bit of mapping, but I do not ever use my phone for actual vehicular navigation. I believe that it is always better for you to use a car GPS for that type of stuff. And that's really what they're designed for. But the offline maps I use on OSM and are excellent in that they have pretty much all of the national park trails on there. So they will allow you to do the things that you need to do. Scanning through it, of course, I use Nextcloud and I use Core as a remote for that application that shall not be named. And other than that, I really don't use it for a ton more. So we will talk a little bit more about my phone build here in a bit, but I just want to say I'm an atypical user. I don't use my phone for video, so I haven't tested out Louis Rossmann's new application because I just don't use my phone to watch videos. I just don't. I am not a normie. Basic communication, simple internet searches, and that is it. I don't use it for a lot of music. I don't use it for a lot of communication. I don't use it for much of anything. And so I'm not the best person to go to when it comes to seeking advice on the standard person's user case for a phone. But that being said, Lineage has been an absolute godsend to me in that I can utilize my phone without a lot of back-end connections into Google. So let's go ahead and chat first about some basic differences between Lineage and Graphene OS. Of course, Lineage is a build that is the current living build that was resurrected out of CyanogenMod. So what this does is it takes your existing Android and then it builds on top of this, and it will change some system files, break a few connections, add a few other ones, remove some apps, add some other apps, and allows you to have an Android device that's closer to the open source with very minimal Google connections. There are a few Google connections in there, like pinging to test if internet works, and not much else by default. So you don't see a lot in there. Lineage, as I said, does have ADB root. What this means is that you can go into your developer options, you can turn on that option, and utilizing your computer, using the ADB application, you can get in there and you can modify system files and things like this. You can make any adjustments to the system, making it a true open source thing that you can move and modify on the fly. Now, this comes with a downside. You cannot lock the bootloader because once you're trying to modify system files, the signing key may not work. And so you can't lock the bootloader. And this means that some banking applications will not work on Lineage. Now, you do have optional micro G and Google apps, which will increase some of the things that don't work by default on Lineage phones or may not work, will work much better if you install one of those two. Micro G being a lot more privacy-centric than the Google apps. In fact, in one research report looking at phone ROMs that are the most private, Lineage was not much better than a stock Google device, but in their report they also said they did Lineage with the full Google apps installed, which sort of defeats the purpose. So if you are running Lineage and you are looking to run it to be more privacy focused, don't install the Google apps. If you need Google services, use micro G. I go without and I don't have any problems. Of course, I don't do banking. I don't do general apps. I'm not installing things from app stores on a regular basis. I have a small set of apps that I use and I don't use anything else. Now, some apps for banking, as I mentioned, may not work. This is because the bootloader is not locked, so the software is not signed, and some apps look for that. Not a lot of apps do, but some do. If you have an app that looks for that, Lineage will not work because that bootloader is not locked. And finally, Lineage can be a little bit more difficult to install because there's a few extra steps involved, and you have to manually flash some things, usually using command line tools, whether you're doing that on Windows or on Linux or on Mac. So all that being said, there are certainly, I like Lineage. I prefer Lineage in many instances. Lineage also, what's really good about it, it has a ton of phones it supports. Whereas Graphene, you have Pixel Line and the new Pixel Lines at that. That's it. Lineage, you can support a lot more devices. If a phone allows you to unlock the bootloader, there's probably a Lineage build for it. And so that is the case. Now, Graphene OS is, as we mentioned, only Pixel devices. In fact, this 5A is it's the last device that they support. So don't get anything older than a 5A right now. But even this, Graphene says they won't support. I think it's August. I don't know for sure. So from here, though, any other Pixel device will get up there and install. It does not allow ADB root, but it does allow you to lock the bootloader, which means that things that are going to look for that locked bootloader are going to work. And so it is better in that case. Now, you do have an app in here which will install the full Google Play services sandboxed. This means that it won't be able to access all of the other things on your device. It'll only work for that particular single connection, but it still is sending data to Google, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Now, for me, I didn't install that because there's no app I need to use that, and if there were an app that needed Google Play services, I would look for an alternative. But for a person that needs Google Apps, that is a very simple, easy one button to install. And it is all sandbox. Now, Graphene OS itself is super easy to install. In fact, if you go on over to their website, and you can see the button down here that says install Graphene OS. This takes you to this page here. Now, if you're the old command line guy, you have this, or you have the web installer. Now, you're seeing this right here on Firefox. If you are wanting to install this, I was not able to get this to work on Firefox. I was able to get this to work with Chromium. So you do have to make sure you have that. So here's their officially supported builds and distributions: Windows 10, Windows 11, Mac OS from Monterey to Sonoma, Arch, Debian 11.12, Ubuntu 20 through 23, presumably 24 is on the list too. Of course, that just came out. Linux Mint 2021, LMDE 6. I use Linux Mint 21 is, I believe, what I was using. Chrome OS, Graphene OS does it. Okay. So Android 11, 12, 13, or 14, and then officially supported browsers. And of course, if I had read this and noticed, oh, Chromium is on this, Chromium outside of Ubuntu, since they have a ship with a broken snap package without working USB. Of course, I was on Linux Mint, so they have their own Chromium, Vanadium, Chrome, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, and Brave. So yeah, if I read this, actually I did read this several times. I don't know why I didn't notice that before. But yeah, Firefox, not supported. Chromium, that works. Now, the only thing you have to do first is you have to enable OEM unlocking. So you need to go on into your phone. You need to go into your developer options. Click on that a couple times. In the build number, and then go into developer options and toggle off the OEM unlocking. Once you do that, you're going to install your packages. So on Arch Linux, Android UDEV, on Ubuntu or Debian, it's Android SDK Platform Tools Common. And they do mention here that Ubuntu and Debian does have a few issues with your the way that the fast boot works or doesn't work, which I found I did have to do that a little bit, restoring a friend's Pixel back to factory so we could get a warranty repair on it. So once you do that, all you do is plug your device in, and then you just click the buttons. In fact, I don't even think, you don't even have to unlock the bootloader. You literally plug your device in. These buttons will be available. They're not, because this is Firefox. You click the button to open the bootloader, and it sends the command directly to the phone. You have to go onto the screen, use the volume buttons, select unlock bootloader, hit the button, and then hit this button to download the factory release. And then hit this button to flash the thing over, and then hit this button to lock the bootloader. That is how easy it is to install Graphene OS, okay? A trained chimpanzee can do this, so don't tell me you can't pull this off. Okay, it is that easy to do. And so installing it was absolutely amazing. Now, we'll talk real briefly. It's not actually in my notes, but I realize I do need to mention it here. For me, porting all my data from my Lineage phone over to Graphene took a matter of 20 minutes. In fact, it took, I think the longest time was to copy my 5 gigabytes of map data down, because I had 5 gigabytes of maps because, hey, I travel around the whole country. I have over half of the United States downloaded. Okay. The biggest space use on my phone is the maps on OS and. So once I did that, though, I use silence. We'll get into this as we get into our how my phone setup is. I use silence for my apps, for my text messaging, because if anybody else is using silence, it is an end-to-end encrypted, and anybody else, it's just regular text messaging. It works great. And they allow me simply to export the database of text messages and re-import them. My Bible stuff did that. My map stuff did that. And everything else was synced through Nextcloud. So that was easy. So I went ahead and did that and had my whole phone set up. It was, I think we did like 10, 20 minutes of just migrating most of the data over. And then from 5 minutes from my cousin's house to downtown at our Chinese restaurant, boom, had my phone completely done. Everything was rebuilt. And so I had a fully functioning mirror of my old Lineage device now on Graphene OS, and it did not take a long time at all. So for you people saying, well, I just can't do that, I need that ecosystem. Nope, we're talking about contacts were synced. We're talking about my text messages were synced. I didn't sync photos, but I usually don't keep a lot of photos on my phone anyway. So that's kind of what that looked like. Now let's talk briefly about my phone build. So as far as we said, I am not a phone normie. I'm not addicted to my phone. I don't do much over there. Now, I have my phone set up almost exactly identical to Lineage, a few minor changes here and there, but I did this because what I have for my phone is already what I consider perfection. So if Graphene OS can duplicate this, all the better. So I have silence for text messaging. I have VLC in the case I want to listen to something, but it's not common. Nextcloud, Canine Mail, OSM and for maps, Anki for studying flashcard things. We have the And Bible, which is I think now called Bible Study. That is available for just for Android, just a completely offline Bible system. I have, I think I have videos on that. We have Orbot, which allows me to connect all of the background services of the phone to the Tor network, should I want to. But I also have the Tor browser bundle separate. I'll talk about why in a bit. I have Open Camera, Nice Feed, which is what I use for the news. I have Simple Calendar. Be warned, though, that the Simple apps have been purchased by a company that is known to put advertising in things, although there is now a fork of the Simple apps, so be aware of that. And I have Core to name the application that shall not be named. Now, since I can't use my custom host file, what I am taking advantage of is in Android 11 and above, we have now the ability to set custom DNS. Now this opens up the possibility I could run a custom DNS on a Pi-hole. I could run a custom DNS on a cloud server. I could run it on a pre-existing service. In my case for testing, I'm using a pre-existing service because it was a free service, and being as I don't use my phone for a lot and I have 300,000 DNS requests, I figured I'd go ahead and try that for a little while. That is through NextDNS. I'm not going to go into all of the nuance of NextDNS now. Maybe we'll do that as a separate video. It allows me to go in there and set all sorts of blocking scripts, whitelists, blacklists, even parental controls. So if you set your phone up to have NextDNS, or your computer for that matter, you can actually run everything on a web interface, and it is slick. I gotta say, I am amazed by how well it works. In fact, it probably works better than my custom host file because since it's pulling from the active block lists, as much as those active block lists are being updated, I'm getting the updates in my phone rather than having to manually do a host file, which I can admit I have not done the host file change on my Lineage phone since I built the Lineage phone 2 years ago. So the downside is there's nothing that blocks TikTok. I had to block it, and there's like 200 TikTok DNSs to block. There is nothing to block them. I took the most significant ones and blocked those, and TikTok might still be able to track me around the internet, but that's what I did in place of that. So that NextDNS really fixed the only hole that I found inside of Graphene OS. But now let's get into what Graphene OS does that Lineage doesn't. First, contact scopes. I'm going to mention this one first because I don't need this. Contact scopes is when you download an app that needs your contacts, but you're like, there's no real reason you need my contacts, but okay, I kind of need the app to work. Contact scopes is a contact access spoofing tool. It makes the application think it has access to contacts, but it doesn't. Ooh. So they have a lot of these sandboxing things. Also, they have a separate permission app that you don't find on Lineage or on stock Android for sensors. So you can disable an app from accessing all of your phone's sensors altogether. Now, there's not like, 15 of them for all of the different gyroscope and the movement and all this kind of stuff. It's just sensors. But I can prevent the app from knowing whatever else is going on with the phone. Absolutely amazing. Now, what I think is the absolute best on this is Bluetooth and wireless. Now, as my recommendation, you should not be running around with these turned on, because if they're turned on, even if you're not actively connecting to things, devices around the world are still probing those, getting device ID numbers and other things just by having this on. For example, if you shop at CVS and you have the CVS app, even if you're not connected to Bluetooth, if your Bluetooth is turned on and you're walking through the CVS store, the app will send you notifications about deals in that aisle because it knows where you are based on the proximity of where the Bluetooth is. So you should not be keeping those things on, but you might turn it on if you need to run a headset or something like that. Well, there is now an option inside of Graphene OS that I can say, turn off Bluetooth after half hour of not being used, because I always forget to turn off my Bluetooth. I'll turn it on to make a phone call, turn off my headset, set the phone over there, and before I know it, 15 stores have tracked I walk past them because my Bluetooth is turned on because I'm an idiot. No longer with Graphene OS, because it toggles that off, and I have it set to toggle off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So I can turn them on, access the things I need, and as soon as I stop using that device and completely forget about Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, which I always do, it just turns itself off. Bonus! That is exactly the type of thing that I need. It also does some amazing sandboxing. So overall, I think I got to admit, I was not ready to admit this at the start of my test, but after a couple weeks on Graphene is better than Lineage if you have a device that can support it. So, of course, we're not looking at all the potential informative and unfortunate drama, but that being said, the software itself is solid. I gotta say, it's got my endorsement. The one thing I would do is you want to have something with custom DNS. Look at Next DNS if you don't have another option, because it's super user friendly. You can test it out. You can get an account for free. It's fairly limited, but it still allows you to make a number of DNS requests and gives you a lot more controls over it. So overall, it is a absolutely beautiful device, and I like it. The only real downsides I see after using it for a little bit, number one downside, the apps that ship with it, except for Vanadium, they suck. Vanadium is the Chromium build. It's basically like an ungoogled Chromium with a few extra modifications. That is a solid application, and I've been trying to use that more often than Firefox for my simple internet searches. So for that tends to work pretty well. The camera app, I don't like it. It's pretty horrible, very limited in functions and scope, and I could have been because sensors wasn't there or auto rotate wasn't there, but it was taking pictures sideways for me. That might just be a user setting, so I am taking some more photos now just to test that out further. The gallery app was an absolute atrocious nightmare. I actually got rid of that and installed something else from F-Droid. I forget which app that is. That might be a change, because from Android 11, where I really liked the gallery, to Android 14, which is on it now, even on my Lineage phone, the gallery over there now makes me want to go and off myself, jump in the lake or something. So that certainly is... it's an issue. So the built-in apps were kind of problematic. And of course, very limited devices. You have to using a Pixel device for it. Those are really the downsides. So if you like the Pixel devices and you're looking for a privacy-centric device, Graphene OS, absolutely. I would have no problem with that. If you're just looking for, hey, you found a good deal on a phone, but it's not a Pixel, check if Lineage supports it. Lineage is still a great option with those things being said. Now, there is one thing I had neglected to bring up. I said I'd talk about it a little bit in a little bit. Now, let's talk briefly about that, and that is Orbot. So Orbot is a application it basically runs as a VPN on your phone. You can set to start and turn on and always be on. So I can't use VPNs on my phone because of the way Orbot works. But what it does is it creates a constant connection to Tor in the background. This is kind of like in Cubes, where when you connect Cubes, it has a connection to Tor and a connection through the ClearNet. And then you can choose on each one of your cubes which network interface you use. Orbot gives me that function on any Android device, so I can say this application goes through Tor, this application does not. And so if I look at my devices here, I tend to keep one application free, and that's actually Firefox, I think. So Firefox on this phone does not use the Tor network. Firefox Focus and Vanadium does use the Tor network. So if I turn on Firefox Focus or Vanadium, I'm searching the internet through Tor. If I search it through Firefox, I am not searching it through Tor. So this allows me to set any one of the connections to the Tor network internally on the phone versus using the ClearNet, which allows me a lot more privacy in using the device itself. Now, there's one other app I want to mention. I also have the Tor browser bundle on here. The reason is Orbot respects your phone's DNS. So if I set my custom DNS, I'm using NextDNS or whatever else, or a custom host file in the case of Lineage, it will respect that host file or the custom DNS, and it runs from it runs through your DNS into the Tor network, allowing you to still block things over the Tor network through your custom DNS. Tor browser bundle uses its own DNS. So I use the Tor browser bundle to break out of my custom DNS or my firewall on my device. So that's why I have the Tor browser bundle installed, because it allows me one extra degree of freedom out of my default firewall in the event that I need it. So that's how I have my phone set up. Graphene OS gets, I gotta say, it on what it is has my glowing endorsement. So if you have a Pixel device and you're looking for a good privacy-focused phone, go ahead and look at that. Now, I have not looked at Calyx OS. That's another competing one. I may or may not. I might wait until I find another cheap Pixel before I try Calyx OS. I don't know. I might keep this exactly as it is. Am I going to go back to my Razer phone, which appears to be working now, or am I going to stick with the Graphene OS phone? I think right now I'm probably going to stick with the Graphene OS phone, simply because, well, it is a little bit laggier. It's not as good of a processor or has as much RAM as the Razer phone. It does have a 5G chip, and I have to admit, might kill my brain cells, but the 5G gives me a lot better network latency than does the 4G. So I'll probably stick with the Graphene OS for the time being and just stick with the Razer if we have some issue with Graphene. So that Razer will be my backup phone. Graphene will be my primary phone. So there are my thoughts about Graphene OS. Leave me your thoughts down below. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Leave me some comments, which questions about it. I'd be glad to answer those in the comments. Also, your experiences with it, let me know those in the comments down below. And with that, we hope that you enjoy switching to Graphene, Lineage, or hey, anything but stock Android. Have yourselves a wonderful day.